What do I do with my hands? I don't know what to do with my hands.
We're live, I guess. It's pretty bad. Welcome to our live Q&A. If anyone's there, hopefully someone's there.
Oh, we're live. We've been live for 18 seconds. What?
Yeah, we're going. I don't know if it's on YouTube yet or not. Is it? Oh, we got 2 viewers. Okay, got something.
It doesn't show me that. I don't see that. Oh, there's Ellie. Hi, Ellie.
Hey, Ellie. I don't know who else is there. Who's our other viewer right now? Our solid 2 viewers.
Yes, you have.
Probably.
She's asking because have we been on YouTube? It was yes, we're on.
Everything's a little delayed.
I don't know who TB is, but that
stands for
Tom Barnes, or is that tuberculosis? I'm not sure.
Oh, a lot of people just jumped in.
Oh, Brian, Dana, hi.
What's Ambry? Up, Ambry, Samantha.
So, I don't see Samantha.
That's Victoria Swanson.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Oh, it says it's me, Sam.
Yeah.
Nah, TB stands for tuberculosis, not Tom.
Joel. Hello, Joel.
Joel. It's nice to not see you. But yeah. I mean, I miss you. That was weird.
Yeah. Well, welcome to our first live Q&A. We'll give a little moment see if anyone else is
and if you have questions, you can just post them in the comments and we can see them.
Yeah. Yeah, we're testing out this new streaming thing, so we'll see how fancy we can get in all this. I don't know if I can switch stuff partway through. Can I switch this? Zoom in. Zoom back out. Testing it out.
Tubby Tom Barnes. It's tuberculosis Tom Barnes.
Tubby Tom. Oh, how are all you guys doing? Haven't seen you guys in 2 days, I guess. Everything. I don't know. Just enjoying life. Please admire Spencer's works of art there on the back. They're for sale. $100 a piece. Spencer Hilliard Originals.
See? I made that with my own 2 hands.
He will be starting a Bob Ross themed TikTok soon.
I'm actually legitimately thinking about going live on Instagram and doing it on Instagram just as a joke.
There you go.
And then I got this one. See?
It's pretty good. All right.
They're fine.
You'll also be talking about how to decorate after you've painted them.
Don't worry about that. They're okay.
Cool. Well, for our live listeners out there, do you guys have any questions that we can start discussing? Anything on your mind in the midst of the quarantine and all that? Anything happening?
It's getting awkward.
I think it's a little delayed though too. So
yeah.
Which then it's that weird thing they'll catch up to this time, and then it's weird and yeah. I don't know. This is our first time doing it, so we'll see how this works out.
I mean, while we're waiting for people to put a question there, if they don't have one, we have the ones on.
Yeah, we have a few. Did any of those stand out to you? We have a few questions on there we can start discussing.
Okay. Let's just go down the list. Is it wrong to have more friends of the opposite gender than friends of one's same gender?
Good question.
I'll give this up to Pastor Chris.
Oh, geez. Yeah, so I think, let me read that for myself, make sure I'm getting this right. Wrong no more. Quick answer, I would say no, right? Like, I don't think there's anything in Scripture that says it's sinful or whatever to have more friends of the opposite gender or something, right? Like, there's kind of like 1 Peter something says, thou shalt not have multiple friends that are guys or something, like that's not the case. So there's nothing clear in there. But I think it comes down to like a wisdom issue with that, right? Like, and we're actually going to get into that when we get into Romans chapter 14. We're going to be talking a lot about wisdom issues and all that. And I think this falls under that category of, it's wisdom, right? Because I think it's not necessarily wrong, but I think, in my opinion, right, like investing more in, say, relationships, like for me, it'd be like with other guys and stuff, like especially when I was like in high school and junior high, like I felt that was very beneficial, is to invest in those relationships, because those are the relationships that really are going to like last. You know what I mean? Like as you grow up, and it's going to be weird for like me, like if for my wife Amber or something, like if I was just hanging out with a bunch of girls, that's weird, right? Like, and that's not going to happen and stuff like that. I'm closer with my wife, right? And she's unique with that. Cheddar is right here next to me, just in case you got that sound picked up. That is him wanting to make an appearance. He might just be moaning the whole time, just so you know. He's very sad of not being on camera, apparently. That took all the momentum out of that. I don't even know what I said. But anyways, like I think those relationships, hey, stop. Those are the relationships that are going to really like last, right? Like I think, like, because even guys that I was really close to in high school, like I still have those close relationships with it, and we'd still been able to kind of be able to have those close relationships over time and everything, and so all of that. And so I don't know, what are you thinking right now, Spence?
I think just wisdom, like you were saying, like you can't find a verse that says you can't hang out with people who are not the same gender as you. But with that, it becomes an unwise thing, I think, if that's all you have, if that's all you have, or if you're a girl and you only have guy friends, or if you're a guy and you only have girlfriends, then you're not setting yourself up, I think, for success, like you were saying, in developing those relationships, because let's be honest, guys and girls go through different things, and we have different problems, and you can't talk about some of those things with girls. It's weird. Or for guys, the other way around, whichever way, and so I think that becomes an issue once you get married. I think that becomes an issue, or in a serious committed relationship. But even then, the serious committed relationship, if it's not marriage, it's still a wisdom issue.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I think it becomes you're setting yourself up for problems.
Mm-hmm.
So
so I think we're both on that same page, right? Of just short answer of this is no, it's not necessarily wrong, but it might not be like the wisest thing to do, right? And so that's kind of where we're landing, like that. Anyone else have some questions out there before we go to more from kind of the Google submissions?
There was
is there any live ones out here? It'd be nice to get some interaction with our audience, right? That's why we're live and doing this and all this, to hear from our viewers out there and everything.
Because we're so popular.
I know. We've hit the double digits. That's pretty good on viewers. Not one to brag, but that's pretty good. Pretty sure that's like pretty up there.
There was a question similar in the other Google form, so I'm trying to pull it up.
Ooh, got a question from Brian here. Let's show this. What does it mean to be chosen? All right. What does it mean to be chosen? It's a good question. All right. I'm assuming we're talking about chosen in like the Bible sense, right? Of we're God's elect, we're chosen in that way, right? Assume that's what's happening. And so, what does it mean to be chosen, right? And so I think we see from Scripture.
Did you put that question up there?
Yeah, that's
super cool. I'm sorry.
Again, super high tech and all this. This is crazy. This is good. Except now you're forever known as the person who asked this question. So I guess there's that thing. But yeah, so I think talking about chosen, right, that we are God's elect, that scripture speaks about, like especially like Ephesians 1 and stuff, that God has chosen us as believers before the foundation of the world, right? Like that's that idea of kind of going to like the idea of election, right? Of God electing people to salvation. Okay. And so that's really like in a very simple way of like, that's what it means to be chosen, right? Is that God has before all time, right? Like before, like Ephesians says, like before the foundation of the world and all that, like, so before even we existed, God chose us. Okay. And that's really a big deal because it isn't as if the idea of God choosing us because it was before the foundation of the world and all that is when he chose us. That means like, it's not like God like looked into the future and saw that like, oh, this person's going to like decide to follow me, therefore I'm choosing him, right? That's not what it is, but rather it's before anything on our end, like God has chosen us, elected us to be saved, right? To bring us to salvation and everything, right? And the fact that that did happen before the foundation of the world means like it's nothing on our end, right? Like we didn't deserve it, right? We didn't earn that choosing, right? We didn't even exist, right? But yeah, but that's the idea of God choosing, right? The idea of God's election and everything, right? That, and so, yeah. And
I'm looking for a verse right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Spencer's looking it up. But, and even like to go into a little bit of that, because I think on another question from when the Google Forms was, why are people so divided on like the topic of the elect, or in this case, like the choosing, right? And I think there's just division, right? Because I think people like to emphasize very much like the concept of like free will, and like if God has chosen people and stuff, like in their mind it can be like, well, nothing really matters then what I do because God has already determined it. It's kind of like that fatalistic type of approach to it, right? And all that. And so there's division on that. But I think what you have in scripture is pretty clear, right? Do you have a verse that you're pulling up there, Spence? Or
Oh yeah, no, you keep talking. I'll get there in a second.
Yeah. Scripture is clear, right? That God has chosen us, and I don't think there's a way around it. And I think that's where like some of that division can come from, is people not wanting to essentially submit to that fact that God has sovereignly chosen people, right? And then I think some people can even on the flip side then of like, okay, if God didn't choose someone, that means like passively they're going like to hell, right? And different things. And so then people can have a problem with that too, in that idea. And so I think on both ends, you kind of have that struggle a little bit of wanting to embrace that, right? But I think, again, this is something clearly taught in scripture and hard to get around if you read through scripture, right? To say that that's not what God does. So.
Yeah. But you see like God choosing people throughout the entire Bible. God chose Noah, right? Noah didn't do anything. God chose Abraham. He wasn't special. He was a pagan, right? God chose Isaac over Esau. Jacob over Esau? Isaac? Jacob and Isaac? I get those confused. I was Jacob over Esau. He chose. And so you see it, and he chose the Israelites, right? Through the Exodus. When as I'm teaching, you notice that Israel isn't good, right? They're in opposition to God, but God chose them. And so it's not anything that we do. It's what God chooses to do. And then I've been going through the book of John with my family. And so I was looking through it. And even Jesus says this in John 15, verse 16. It says, "You did not choose me, but I choose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you." And so even Jesus himself is saying it, right? It's like, I chose you. You didn't choose me. This is because of my grace. So I think you can take it to the extreme, right? And say, well, if God's choosing everybody, then why do I have to go tell people about Christ? And the answer is because God told us to, right? In Matthew. Because there are people who take it to that extreme. If God has chosen everybody who's going to be saved, then I don't need to do anything. Well, that's also wrong, because we're told to go, right? How does God choose those people or like figure that out? It's through us, right? It's through the preaching of the word and the telling people about it.
Yeah.
I'm done now.
Yeah. No, you started answering that. I don't know if you see that question on there, Spencer, this next one of like that paradox of you don't know someone. Yeah. Like some people will say, oh, since God has elected people, like therefore there's no motivation for evangelism. But I think what the question here, like Ellie's posting here, is I feel like instead of discouraging evangelism, it should actually encourage it, right? Because you don't know, right? As this question says, like you don't know who are saved, right? And so but you do have hope that there are some people who are chosen, right? That there will be some people who will accept like the gospel, accept that offer of salvation, right? And stuff like that. And so I think there's that reality too of I think it should encourage evangelism, right? Rather than discourage it, because God has chosen us to be that vehicle and we don't know who is saved or not. It's not like they have little markers above their head of like, don't even bother, right? Like, forget this guy, right? It's like, no, like we don't know. But we do have hope that some people will respond positively. It might not be to you, right? It might be someone else down the line or whatever, but we can have that hope as well. And so, yeah, like I think God's sovereignty in choosing should actually encourage evangelism rather than discourage it on that end. So, great question there with that.
I like what Tom posted. He said chosen, but chosen, not only chosen, but chosen for all time, right? Like our eternity is. Oh, look at you. Put it up there.
I'm on.
I know you're amazing, right? And so we're chosen for forever, right? Whatever, Jesus can't let go of his hand. I can't think of the verse off the top of my head, right? But
no one can snatch them out of his hand. Yeah.
Yeah. We're sealed with the Spirit in Ephesians 1, right? So, I mean, what a promise, though. That's an amazing promise and a security that should give us the hope and strength to actually want to go tell people, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're not telling people to be saved. We're doing it because we already are. And it's out of gratefulness, and wanting other people to be saved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So back on to evangelism. Someone posted this question when we did the survey, if people wanted to do the Q&A. And so it kind of goes with this and with the other question that we have. It says, so I really have curiosity about friendships/relationships and like the line between witnessing to a non-believer friend and going along with what they do that doesn't go along with the Bible, and what some red flags are to kind of turn down the friendship relationship, if that makes sense.
All right. I might have to look that up, read that.
Yeah, it's a long one.
Let me see. Let me bring that up as well. If I can find that. I guess you could start answering that if you want while I'm looking it up.
And like the line between witnessing to a non-believer friend and going along with what they do that doesn't go along with the Bible. So I think that one's pretty cut and dry. It's echoing now. That's weird. Anyway, is if they're asking you to sin, right? At that point, the answer should be no, I'm not going to do this. Can we have friends that are not believers? Yes. Should they be your best friend and your confidant and the place where you get advice from? No. Corinthians is pretty clear on that, right? It says don't be unequally yoked. It's because they're going to give you advice that's going to pull you in the wrong direction compared to somebody who's a believer who's going to give you biblical advice or should be giving you biblical advice. So it's not that you can't have friends, but they should be, I wouldn't say at an arm's distance, but they shouldn't be your person that you go to for advice.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I got an agreement from the pastor. Look at that. And then as far as like, when do you stop witnessing to them? When they reject it, right? Like there's the passage Tom taught on at winter camp a couple years ago is like, don't cast your pearls before swine. And at some point, some people will be like, hey, stop talking to me about this. And at that point, like if you're like talking about Christ all the time, maybe you should back off on that like actual evangelism and just not saying stop, but maybe just live your life in a Christian, like Christ-like manner. And so I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
Yeah. And I think even at that point, like you might transition more to like just praying for them and like really looking for different opportunities that arise up now and then. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said and everything. And so, yeah, I think you never want like your desire to share the gospel with someone, I guess, to then, I don't know, destroy kind of your own walk with the Lord too, right? Like I think there's that part of it where, if I'm understanding like the question right, of like sometimes I think like we can like we talked about it like winter camp, even where it talked about like we're called to be like in the world but not of it, right? And so like yes, like we're not supposed to like, hey, I only have Christian friends, I don't ever associate with people who don't believe and all that. That's not what we're called to, right? We're called to actually like be involved in that way and have other relationships like with people, right? Have friends like that for the sake of the gospel, right? And that's where I think keeping that focus too is like ultimately like we're hopefully having these relationships for the sake of the gospel, right? To proclaim the gospel and everything. And but I think also like you have to be wary of like at what point are you no longer influencing them and they're instead influencing you, right? Like, and I think I've seen that a lot with people where they can kind of go under the guise of like, well, I'm just like, I'm like a good influence on them. But like what ends up a lot of times happening is like they end up being more influenced and looking more like their worldly friends than they're actually making an impact on their unbelieving friends' lives, right? And so, again, that's not to say don't hang out with unbelievers, right? I think that's good to have those relationships so you can bring the gospel to them, right? That's why we're here, right? That's why we're not saved and then taken to heaven or something, right? That's why we're here, is to continue to bring the gospel to people. But I think, again, there's wisdom there of like recognizing like, hey, like when I hang out with them, like I end up like either sinning or doing this, and it's like, yeah, that's not good, right? Like that's not a good thing. And maybe it's not even like, maybe you're not necessarily like sinning, but it's not like encouraging you to like grow, right, in different things in your walk. And so I think there's wisdom there in that as well. And so just being aware of that, and that's where I think comes from, like making sure, like as Spencer said, like those who are really your closest friends that you really go to and surround yourself with hopefully are believers, right? Because like that's going to help you, right? You have that kind of foundation that kind of helps you and encourages you, and then you can like branch out and reach out to more people and stuff like that. I think that was something that really helped me, especially like in high school, where I did struggle a little bit with that balance, and especially like at school, not really having like believing friends and stuff and trying to be a light to them. But sometimes it was hard and you get kind of sucked into that life a little bit and everything. And so, but then having like a solid foundation of friends, like from the church that I spent most of my time with, right? Like that really helped me, especially my later years of high school, to really stay grounded in the gospel and different things and be able to try to be a light to people at school and other things. So yeah.
One more thing.
Go for it.
Dating to save somebody is not okay, right? Like if you're looking into having an intimate relationship with somebody and you are a believer, I think the Bible is pretty clear that that person needs to be a believer too. And that's what that 1 Corinthians passage is. 1 Corinthians, I don't know, 7, 6?
6. I forget if it's 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians. I always forget.
Yeah, I don't know. Me too.
That do not be unequally yoked, right?
Yeah. And so I think it's really easy to think, oh, well, I'm going to have this relationship with them, and through this relationship, I'm going to be able to share the gospel and share Christ. And it's the exact opposite of what should happen. They should be saved, and then you have that relationship. So just be mindful of that, because I understand that's probably a huge temptation for especially high schoolers, right? And where's that balance? That balance there is a line, and that line should be at that point at a relationship, like intimate relationship.
But I can change him, right? No, like that's not it, right? Like you can't change their heart, right? Only God can do that. And so I definitely agree with that. Like the missionary dating mentality, right? Like that kind of thing is not what we're called to as believers, right? And then also like kind of even taking a step back is hopefully you're not also like just sharing the gospel with someone so that you can date them, right? That's like another bad motivation, right? Like you want people to be saved for God's glory, right? For them to actually have salvation, that you genuinely care for them in that way, and stuff like that. Not just, oh, this is like I need to get around this rule, and so they need to be saved, so then I can like date them, right? Like that's not the goal, okay? And so yeah, keep that in mind. We got a few different questions there. I guess we can go kind of in order real quick of how would you go about sharing to a Mormon? It's a good question.
That's difficult because Mormons will say that they believe and they will agree with everything that you say. So that's a difficult place. What I would do is the main difference between, well, there's a lot of differences, but the main difference and the one that actually matters is who they say Christ is and who we say Christ is. So I would point out and ask them, who do you think Christ is? Who is Jesus? And we believe that Jesus is God, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There's many, many other verses that say that Jesus is God. And that's where I would start, in a loving way, not in a combative way, because it's super easy to get into like I'm right and you're wrong kind of debate, but in a loving way, just point out the main difference, and there are a whole bunch of other differences, but the main one is going to be who Christ is. And they don't believe that Christ is God, right? He's like the brother of Satan or something.
Yeah, I think really like I'm not like an expert of like all different like religions and what they believe in all different things, but I think one like simple truth that is like with all of them is like really all religions, like what's wrong about them is they have a wrong view of Christ, right? Like you can boil down like essentially almost every religion of while there might be other things obviously, right, that we also don't agree with and other things like that, like ultimately like all false religions have a wrong view of Christ, right? And that's where essentially all those things stem. So I think Spencer, that like what Spencer said is like spot on of really like, what do you think about Christ, right? And that's like, and that can be an honest question, right? Like, again, yeah, like you want to do it out of love and not combative or anything like that. But I think it's just that desire of like, yeah, what do you think about Christ, right? And then I think there's multiple other things you can start getting into. Because I've talked with, like I've had a couple conversations with people who've believed in that. And I think just one, like, I think, yeah, like talking about Christ, that's foundational. That's great. Talking about like scripture in the Bible, right? Because like we obviously don't believe like the Book of Mormon is from God and stuff like that. And so I think you're going to have to deal with that. And even like, I think from the little I've talked with people is there can even still be a confusion of like works and like what role does works play in salvation. And I think, again, I'm not sure on a large scale of what all they believe, but I think I've had my interactions have been, at least there's still that understanding of, well, I'm a good person, therefore like I'll be saved, right? Which again, scripture is very clear on like Ephesians 2:8-9, it's by grace you're saved, not by your works, right? And so like, well, what do you do with those passages, right? And getting into kind of that. And so I think those are like kind of again, not super in detail, but like just ways of how you go about sharing is one, I feel like a good tactic, I feel like, I feel like tactic's such a weird word for this because it's like sharing the gospel.
Right.
But what, you know what I mean? Where it's like, I think one way that helps me is to ask questions, right? When you ask questions of people, like it doesn't come across as like maybe as mean and as aggressive, right? Because one, hopefully you genuinely want to know. Like when I ask those, I want to know, like, what do you think about like Christ, right? Like what, like, okay, like I don't know much about like how do you guys think like you're saved or stuff like that, right? Like there's questions you can ask, and then when you get their answer, then you can build off of that of like, okay, well, like say they talk about like, well, I think like good works or something like that, like I do a lot of good things, then you can ask like, okay, well, you say you believe in the Bible, and so then like, well, what do you do with like Ephesians 2:8-9, where it's by grace you're saved, not by your works, right? And so I think there's ways you can do it that are not combative and not offensive, right? Like, I mean, the gospel message might be offensive, but hopefully you're not the one being offensive, like, and all that. So I think that's kind of my approach would be that, like, ask questions, and like you kind of, I'm sure there's a lot of resources online as well. And I think even in the comments, someone mentioned some resources. And so I think that's, you can look online of things that things that are different between Mormon, what Mormons believe and what Christians believe and all that. And you can then kind of ask questions regarding those things. So that's kind of my quick answer on that.
That a lot of times getting stuck on what they believe and what we believe leads us down rabbit holes that we don't need to go down. Right. And so I would just focus on like what Chris said and what I've said is Christ, but actually caring. I think that's a big deal. If you're just going in it because, oh, you're a Mormon, you're wrong. And instead of thinking about their salvation, then you're already setting up for failure if you're going with that mindset, but going into that mindset that these people are misled, these people are misguided, and it really is like the work of Satan. Right. And so they're just not saved and they're confused. And going in it with love and genuine love is going to be really impactful than argument.
Yeah.
Combative. That's the word.
Yeah.
Words are hard.
English is tough, man. It's tough out there. All right. Let's look at this question. It's a good one. What would you suggest we do if we don't have contact with non-believers on a daily basis? For example, if you're homeschooled, working in Christian community, quarantine, how does evangelism work then? I think I might just hide. Should I hide it? I feel like I'm like, it's like covering my whole face. That's all right. Yeah, I think this is a great question because I think we do have a lot of people in our group and different things that have said like in similar words of like, well, I only interact with like believers. How do I share with someone and stuff like that? And I think that's where one, you might have to go out of your way to like find people, right? Like that. I would like to say, while you might only interact with believers, I feel like there's probably people around you, whether like maybe family, extended family, that maybe aren't believers, or even like actual neighbors, right? Like people around you, physically around you, neighbors and stuff who also aren't believers, right? And maybe you're like, well, I don't know my neighbor. There you go. There's an opportunity, right? Like get to know them, right? Like, and that might be like if like with your family, right, as well. Like maybe you can help encourage your family to get to know your neighbors and everything as well in that. And so I think that's like an opportunity, right? Because it's not, I don't know, the Great Commission isn't like go and make all disciples of all nations unless you don't really know any people who aren't believers. Like that's not what it says, right? Like it's, we have this command to go and make disciples, right? And so it's looking for opportunities. And honestly, like it might start with you just praying, like, God, like help me to like see opportunities that I have, or bring opportunities to me, and stuff like that. And that's can be a convicting prayer to pray, right? Because sometimes God really does answer that and then brings those opportunities. Then you're like, oh man, like, yeah, now I got to do this. Right. And so But I think a lot of times too, that prayer can also, sometimes I wonder, like, is God actually bringing more opportunities to me, or is he like kind of opening my eyes to actually see the opportunities I've always had, right? Because I think we may have more opportunities than we really realize, right? That we just don't always take advantage of. So I think, again, family is one. I think physical neighbors right around you. If you do any extra curricular things, right? Like I know some of you guys do like dance or sports or other things, right? Like there's opportunities I'm sure there, right? Like I'm sure not everyone's saved in all those as well. So I think that's kind of my answer is like, I think, yeah, you might just have to like do the work of like going out of your way to try to get to know more people, right? And building those relationships and everything.
I would say church is another one. Like you're deluding yourself if you think everybody at church is a believer. And if you're really trying to evangelize to people, church is the best place to do it because they're already there and they're already willing, right? And so if it's fear that's stopping you, I think church is a great place to evangelize to people and just ask them what they believe and who they think Christ is or if they're saved. Like it's surprising what answers you will get, honestly. And so just because people go to church or you go to the youth group or you're attending this live chat doesn't make you a believer, right? And I think that's a very easy place to start would be just at church and just talking about it with people. It is surprising the answers that you get. And so, and just paying attention, I think also, because you're surrounded by more non-believers than we think, right? Like, kind of like what Chris was saying. That's my 2 cents.
There you go. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's always opportunities out there. I get to know people, and yeah, even in the church, it's not always everyone's believers, right? And so, get to know people, right? More than just hey, how are you doing, right? Like it's like actually figuring out where are you at, right? Like with the Lord and working through that with them.
I think part of that they also have to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but that's not your job if you're trying to evangelize, right? So,
yeah, you can only deal with what people kind of do because we don't know their hearts, right?
Right.
Real quick, going back to our last question about sharing with the Mormon, Tom mentioned a book, Fast Facts on False Religions, which has Tom Barnes' seal of approval. So I don't know if you can get much higher approval than that. So I haven't read it, but Tom has given the thumbs up. So I think that's opportunity there. Check that out. Resources out there and everything. So
if TB Tom says it's good, it's good.
There you go. Just want to throw that out there. So, yeah. Well, I think we're already at like 40 minutes. I think we're supposed to be like 15 to 20. That's all right. That's good. I like this. This is fun. Hopefully this is beneficial for you guys. I think we'll probably start wrapping up here. We'll do this again next Friday. Same time, same place. I don't know if I'll be in the same place. I might move around my house. I don't know. We'll see. I'll see if Cheddar's involved again too. Maybe he'll come with some words of wisdom or something. I don't know. But yeah, with whatever sound effect it makes. Yeah, if you weren't there for that, go back earlier. Multiple things happened, which was great at the start of this live stream. But yeah, so hopefully this is encouraging for you guys. Again, you can submit more questions to us through that Google form we sent out. If you need the link for that, contact us, right? You can even text us if you have questions. And then again, maybe think of some you can post here on the live chat as well and everything. And then we can do that little fancy graphic where we get it on the screen and everything, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so we'll check in with you guys again next Friday for our next live Q&A. All right, 3:00. Yeah, make sure, I guess you can subscribe and all that. I don't know, all the YouTube.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell.
Yeah, do all that so then you know when we're going live.
If you like this video, you could see the description below for more.
Yeah, well, I don't know where everything is. But anyways, whatever it is, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you're encouraged. We're praying for you guys through all this. We definitely miss seeing you guys in person and everything, and glad we can have these opportunities to interact a little bit more with you guys and everything. So we'll hopefully see you guys next week, and actually before that on our Wednesday and Thursday nights and all that. And oh yeah, happy Easter, right? Easter's this Sunday. That'd be great. So hopefully you guys enjoy Easter, right? Celebrating resurrection of Christ, right? And hopefully you get to really dwell on the importance of the resurrection and all that means for our salvation, right? And how crucial that is, right? Something that we shouldn't just celebrate on Easter every day, right? All right. So I think that wraps us up. So
Miss
I don't
you.
have a cool like ending line of. I feel like I need some cool line.
And this has been Fireside Chats with Chris.
Definitely not like that. But anyways,
Or
see you guys.
Pastor Chris out.
All right. Before any other great slogans come up, we're leaving. All right.
Reverend Williams. Peace.
See you guys.